Good morning, everyone. I'm Cassidy Bruin, AIA New York State's Associate Director of Education, and welcome to the fourth session of the 2024 Small Firm Symposium hosted by AIA New Jersey, New York State, and Pennsylvania. Today's program is AI Image Generation, Prompt Design and Engineering. This program will run until 1 p.m. with time for questions and answers. Before we begin, please put your name on your Zoom profile to help staff with attendance, mute your microphone, and turn off your video. You are encouraged to use the chat box feature at the bottom of your screen to post comments and submit questions. This program has been approved for 1.5 LUs. You are required to attend the entire program to receive these credits. Zoom and staff will track your attendance. In addition to tracking your attendance, you will see 4 different continuing education words at various times throughout the program. The speakers will announce these words as they appear on the screen, and they will also be posted in the chat box. Please write down these 4 words as you hear or see them, because you will be required to record them on your CE evaluation after the program. This evaluation link will be posted in the chat box at the conclusion of the program and emailed to you afterwards. You must complete and return this evaluation by tomorrow, Friday, April 19th, noon Eastern Time. Again, please open your chat box to see the CE words throughout the program and the evaluation link at the end. Here are today's disclaimers. They were also emailed to you previously in the Know Before You Go. Here are today's learning objectives. And now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to our speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. Brian, you got the presentation? There we go.
Does everybody see it there now? Fantastic.
That's great.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Brian Penshow, and I'm here with William Martin, Bill.
Hello.
And we've been doing this for a few months now, showing people how to use this AI image generators. When I first saw this, I was filled with fear. And my best way of dealing with that is to learn as much as I can about it and then try to understand it so I can reduce that fear. And that's what we're here today to do for you, because I imagine that we've heard some people that might be a little bit curious, which we love, but also fearful about the new technology. So we're here to explain its benefits, its uses, and that it's not thinking, it's not magic, it's really just advanced math.
Yeah, Brian was fearful. I was fearless. When I saw this, I said, I've got to learn how to use this. This is the next great leap forward. But we've been researching this for over a year now. We've only been giving presentations over about the last 4 to 5 months. So you're going to see and learn a little bit about what we've been doing over the last year. And hopefully, as Brian said, that your curiosity will be satisfied and you will not have the fear that is out there and palpable for this new advance forward.
What you're seeing on the screen is not a photograph. It's a computer-generated image. It's not a rendering. It is completely fabricated by the computer based on those words that you see in the caption below. The words are something we call a prompt, and the prompt is that text generation idea of what you want to see to generate this photographic type image. The numbers at the bottom that looks very, very confusing and doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Those are all the settings that you'll need to generate the image. Most of those settings don't need to be changed usually, and in the interfaces that we're going to show you, they don't have a lot of those settings. But when you take a deep dive into it, you have so much control over the possibility of generating these images that you can do literally anything you want. Some are more difficult to do than others. Some are easier to do. We're going to show you exactly where those pitfalls are and how to improve or avoid them. So really, this is going to be fun and exciting. It's not going to be a boring presentation because you're going to get to do stuff hands-on. You're going to get to start generating these images by the time we're done with the presentation, you're going to be very good at it. And with a little bit of extra time, you can become experts at it. This is another generated image from the computer. Before this, we would spend a lot of time modeling or drawing these images. And then the first hack that I had in the artistic world was Photoshop. And I'd scan in a line drawing and start applying these materials with Photoshop to try and get a rendered image. And that was back in the 90s that I was able to do that. It would take hours and hours and hours to plan out these images and try to render them that way. But then we got more advancements with technology, and we were able to start using Lumion and other rendering engines to be able to color these in. They still take a significant amount of time in preparing the work, getting it ready, and then applying the materials, and then the lighting, and then running the render and hoping, praying that it all works out. Now,
And this
go
is,
ahead, Bill.
yeah, I'm sorry. We're using this as a leverage to our creativity. As architects, we want to be creative individuals, and being able to communicate that creativity with rendered images is very helpful to our practices. So to be able to paint with words, as Brian likes to call it, through the prompting of the AI, we can get images to communicate our ideas to clients and to our own office staff very quickly and very precisely. So that's what you're seeing here in this particular image, and we're going to walk you through how to get there.
And the one other thing I wanted to say about this technique is, for years and years and years, I've been developing the connection between using a pencil and sketching and my mind's creativity. That's my primary outlet, is sketching, and kind of always has been since I took up architecture. That creativity linked to drawing was very important in visualization of these ideas that I've had. I love drawing, but it was time consuming. And in my brain, the tornado of ideas come a lot faster than I felt like I had the ability to sketch out the ideas. So I kept trying to get these ideas out as fast as I could to evaluate and look at them, and end up with so much yellow tracing paper around, feeling like it was wasteful, but always able to treat this. I'm sure those stacks of boxes behind Bill have lots of sketches in them of projects, because you don't
You're
want
not
to throw
supposed
them
to see
away.
that.
Yeah, you're not supposed to throw this stuff away. So I would save all of this stuff and accumulate, but it took so much time. Now I have a tool where I can get through it. I can save all the stuff digitally, organize it, track it, and generate the ideas that I have in my head at a speed that I feel like I'm having the ideas finally. This is who I am. I don't know if everybody on the call knows who I am. I'm the current president of AIA New Jersey. I've been involved in AIA for 15 years, a dozen years, about that. And I've always been interested in technology. I'm not as an early adopter as Bill is, he'll tell you. But when the technology is making an impact and I see the potential of it, I want to get on board. I don't want to be behind the curve. Bill, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. This is me, William J. Martin. WJM Architect is my firm. I'm a small sole proprietor firm in northern New Jersey. My friends call me Bill, and you should call me Bill also. And I will be in DC with my bow tie on. So if you're going to DC and you see a guy with a bow tie that kind of looks like me, it's probably me. So my focus on this is really about making new technology productive for our AIA members. And when I see a new advance in technology and I apply it to my own practice as a sole practitioner, and I can make it productive for myself, then I focus on that. I was one of the first architects in New Jersey to get a Revit license back in 2002, because as I saw the demo, I instantly recognized how this was going to be the future. I was also one of the first architects to have a website back in 1995. I think I was one of the first 5 firms in New Jersey. So, that's, I mean, I don't need to go into my education or anything like that, but I'm an early adopter. I'm always looking for ways to improve workflow and improve communications within the office and with clients.
Our first word for the credits is prompt.
And it doesn't mean being on time.
It could.
Okay.
It could. That's one of the things that we have to talk about today is the many meanings of words has been creeping into our development process, and I'm seeing more and more of it as I go in creating the images. Words with
Right.
multiple meanings are a challenge.
Yeah, we discussed that yesterday with the group that we were presenting in front of because there was some confusion about how we were using the word model. Because model means something to an architect, it means something different to the computer people that created this AI. So we were
And
kind of
something
using
different in
them.
the fashion world too, right?
Right.
So like it becomes challenging when you use the words contextually. You have to be aware of that context, and that'll come
Yeah.
a little bit later in the presentation.
Yes, we will explain that.
So why are we doing this? Like, what's the real purpose of getting on the AI bandwagon, right? Is this just hype? Does it seem like a fad, a fashion? Is it a pet rock? I don't really think so. I think this is the next advancement in technology. Um,
Yes.
and that's really why it's important to evaluate whether this is going to be impactful to the profession or not, right? We don't want to just throw good money after bad after every fad. And we've experienced them before, like MySpace or zip drives or stuff like that, that just seems like, did I have to do that? Right. And this seems like, yeah, you have to do this. And the reason is enumerated here on the screen. But besides just that, this technology is going to make you so much more productive, 10 times more productive in a small portion of your business, not 100% of your business. It doesn't replace who you are or what you're doing, but it augments what you're doing at a level that I have not ever seen before.
Yeah, it will make you have the ability to be much more creative and to communicate that creativity within your office and to clients. It also will speed up the process of being creative because the images that AI generates come out so quickly that they become very useful in terms of going through various options in designs and explaining those options to staff as well as clients. And we're going to explain that in more detail. So the idea is that it speeds up, and there is a small investment to be made, but you will make that up easily in the smoothing out of your workflow.
So what is this and exactly how does it work? Let's go through this pretty quickly so you guys can understand that it isn't some sort of thinking machine. We're not there yet. I wish they had come up with a different term other than artificial intelligence, because I have not encountered any intelligence from a computer yet in the terms of defining it as independent thinking. Almost all of these generative AI machines, they are neural networks, and that just means that it's a large tensor space that's interconnected. So instead of a matrix of like 2 by 2 matrix, this is in multi dimensions, this tensor space, and it's all interconnected. That's all that a neural network is.
Yeah,
It doesn't actually think.
it doesn't think. It's just math. It's not like Terminator.
Not yet.
Well, you say not yet, but it's always going to be just math. It just gets faster and faster, and as it grows, its libraries by which it learns grow larger.
These are the three major models that are out there right now. The models are the pre-trained image libraries that contain the database. It's a numerical database. It's not a stack of artwork like that you in your basement that you could go look for paintings. It's all of the words, all of the images, all of the ideas, the concepts have been tokenized into numbers that the computer can understand. DALL-E by OpenAI. OpenAI was the first company that's, I guess they're basically Microsoft. They kind of have a close partnership with Microsoft, but they were the first ones to introduce these image generator models, and they invented the contrasting language image processor, which is a model that takes the words, and converts it into the numbers that the image models can then use. Midjourney is a fantastic model. It works on Discord only, which is like a chat service for gaming. It also can work for business, but I think it's similar to Slack. There are other softwares like this. Midjourney only works on Discord. I believe you have to pay per image or for a subscription service to be able to access their image generation.
Right.
However, the quality that comes out is fantastic and fantastical, because it's not always perfectly aligned with what reality is, but more of an imagination space. And it's wonderful to see that in action. So I encourage you to take a look at it, or what other people are doing on the Midjourney server on Discord, but not necessarily to spend any money on doing it there, unless it's something that you want to do yourself. It's certainly not necessary, and the tools for using Midjourney are more fantastic idea generation than the productivity that you could use in an architecture office. We're going to give you the interfaces and the tools that you can use, and one of those is Stable Diffusion. It's an open source software. That means the license is an MIT license. You can use it commercially and you do not have to pay for it. It does require some very limited computer programming knowledge, basically how to install software that doesn't come in a self-installer package. You need to know how to do, and to go into the batch files that start up the program and associate the paths for where your data is stored, things like that.
Yeah, you need
You
to
can-
know how to write code to an extent.
Or have a tech guy that can just install it for you
Right.
and use it. That kind of, it's a basic thing, but there's no company that's invented a self-installer package for your computer yet, because they're not selling it to you. It's free. You have to go get it yourself.
But don't worry, you don't have to know how to write code in order to do this. By the end, we will explain to you how you.
Oh, you'll be
get
doing it
there.
on this
Yeah.
presentation right now,
Yes.
and hopefully you can share the images in the chat box so that we get to see what they look like. But let me explain to you quickly how the math is really working here. Scientists, physicists discovered many years ago the mathematics to describe Brownian motion and diffusion. Think of dropping one drop of milk in a cup of black coffee and watching it diffuse into that cream colored coffee. We know the math for that, how the noise is added into that space, how it's diffused, how the milk diffuses through the liquid. This computer scientists discovered that they can run that math in reverse and subtract noise out of the system and go from the integrated coffee cup to taking the milk out of it mathematically. And that's basically how this works. We start with a large image filled with noise, random pixel space. That's one way to do it. And then we subtract at each step a little bit of predicted noise and end up with an assumed image that's underneath all that noise. So it looks a little bit like what it does on the screen. This is very simplified and shortened. We use many more steps to remove the predicted noise. But the image that's underneath there is what we're describing with words.
Yeah, it basically is, if you have an interface for AI, you type in the word cat, it goes to its library of images and it looks for any image in there that's tagged as a cat. Then it stacks them all up. It's kind of like a cube of photos all stacked up on top of each other, just to give you a visual in 3D. Then it looks from the top down and it merges all those images together. At each step, it removes the noise that doesn't relate to the cat until it ends up with, and you can see on this slide, the fourth step is an image of a cat. So this is essentially how it works. It's really all math, but it's the speed of the computer to be able to do this is how it's able to do this so quickly and come up with an image that actually matches what you are trying to create with your prompt.
And the image of the cat that's remaining is not an image that was taken from the web. It isn't that they selected an image and we removed the noise and we found a copyrighted photograph or artwork that was in the library that we selected to use. This is a generated image that's based on the idea that the model has of a cat, based on the millions and millions of images of cats that it's seen. So there is no reproduction of an exact photograph that the model was trained on. in the outputs. There's always a transformation that's happening. This is a mathematical transformation. So Chat GPT stands for generative predictive pre-trained transformer, generative pre-trained transformer. It is transforming your input based on all of that information that it's seen into a brand new generated output.
Right. So the prompt for cat results in a unique image of a cat. It's a new image. It never existed before. And that's how the AI works. It, as Brian said, pre-trained. It's pre-trained on its library of images. So each AI version or each AI company has its own training, its own libraries that it uses to create these images. And that's why you get different images from the same prompt as you run these various modeling programs.
You don't need a lot of hardware capital expenditure in order to be able to run this stuff locally on your own machine. It'll probably run on what you have now, unless what you have is incredibly old. The important hardware key component in this is a graphics card. The better your graphics card is, like if you're into gaming or if your kids are into gaming and you have a really, really good GPU, that's going to make your software run much, much faster. And the reason is the calculations it has to do. On the CPU, it does it in serial format, one at a time. With the GPU, it does all those mathematical calculations in parallel. So it can do thousands and thousands of partial differential equations in seconds compared to the CPU running it serially. You can do it both. It just takes maybe 4 to 5 times longer with the CPU as compared to the GPU. And
The
for
bottom
this,
line is
yeah,
it probably runs, it will most likely run on the equipment that you already have in your office.
right. And there's options for running it on the internet using Amazon Web Services or Google Colab or any of those other spaces where you can kind of run the information through. Software that you need. Python comes with Windows. You don't really need to install a new version, but you can. If you don't have Windows, if you have Linux or another operating system, you can install Python because the program is written in Python. It's a programming language. Git
Right.
needs to be installed. It's a version tracker. It comes from the web. It is just a simple version tracker and for installing the software.
Yeah, this is the code stuff that I was referring to earlier. You don't necessarily have to be a code writer, a programmer, a computer expert in order to use this. But Brian is giving you the basics of how it works and how it was created. And if you did dive into the code of the AI, this is what you would find.
And the last part that you need, the component, is this web user interface. You can use automatic 1111 is one of the first and most common ubiquitous web user interfaces. And then the other is Comfy UI. Comfy was a hacker college student that wanted to understand how this worked, and he built an interface. And now he works for Stability AI. He was hired right out of college because they're using Comfy at Stability AI, where they're programming the new models and everything. So I think that's a great story that he was able to create this software and then start working for the company that built the models that he was trying to understand.
And it's comfy.
Yeah. And this is just a look at, I don't want to spend a lot of time here on the interface for automatic 1111, but here you can see there's a prompt box and a negative prompt box, all of the settings. This is where your image will appear. And then there's a generate, big orange generate button here.
Yeah,
The
we
interfaces
know
on the,
this is hard. We know this is
yeah,
hard to see on the slide. So just kind of follow along. This is basically what an interface looks like. These are all the little
this,
slides and nodes and everything.
this is another interface. This is what Comfy
Right.
UI looks like. It comes as a blank space. You put in all these boxes and add the information, and then you hit Q prompt and it'll run an image generation the same kind of way. The web interfaces are a little bit different. We'll get to them in just a moment. I wanted to give you this option right now. If you go to this website, clipdrop.co/stable diffusion turbo, when you start entering your prompt into this little box down here, you'll immediately get an image. So you can start playing around with that right now. You can go look there. Turbo doesn't
it's
do
free.
many steps, but it'll give you immediately the image that you want to look at. So you can start experimenting with prompts about what you want to see and those kind of things. You want to try out another web version? There's stablediffusionweb.com app image generator. And this has got a prompt box right here. You just put in your prompt and then hit generate, and you'll get your output right here. And it'll show you what it looks like and whether you want to download the image or you want to upscale the image. You can do those kind of things. There's other options too, besides just the web or the download interfaces. There are phone interfaces, but our second CE word is interface. Bill, you want to talk a little bit about the phone apps?
Yeah, like I said earlier, my goal in this was less about writing the code and more about making the technology immediately productive in my workflow and in my office. So I started looking at the interfaces directly, the ones that were free to access. And what I would suggest that you do is if you could take out your phone, and whether you are on an iPhone or whether you're on an Android, makes no difference, go to your app store and look for, in this particular case, on the left, it is an app called Wonder. It's an AI art generator. Its logo there is a little kind of purple potato chip. And if you go to your app store, you can download that and load it in. It will ask you to make a username and a password. It doesn't cost anything, but lately we've been finding that they've been inserting a lot of advertising into the process of using this. It's becoming cumbersome. When I first started using it about 8 months ago, it didn't have that. But there are other apps as well. Now, if you look on the right side of this slide, second to the bottom, you'll see the Wonder app, and next to it to the left of that is a W with a rainbow. That is the Dream by Wombo. The W in there is Wombo. That's the company that makes it. And that's another one that you can get through your app store. And I use both of these on a regular basis. They're on my phone. They're very easy to use. I'm going to show you what the interface looks like in the next slide. But the point of this is that this works on your phone even, and very effectively on your phone. So I would download both of those and get through the ads. They're free to use. I subscribe to both of them. Last time I checked, it was $10 a month to subscribe to each of them. And I mean, you could load it, subscribe, get rid of the advertising, play around with it, and then a month from now, you could just delete it from your phone if you want to. But I find these very effective. I use these every day, and I've been doing so for the last 8 months or so. Now you see here, this is actually a screenshot of the interface. At the top, it says enter a prompt, and that's where you would type in cat or house or small house or large house or Victorian house. That's where you type that in. Below that, you see where it says add your photo. I'll explain that in a moment. To the right of that is something, it's 1:1. That's the aspect ratio of the image you want to generate. If you click that, you can choose different aspect ratios, landscape, or portrait, or just the square 1:1. Then you go down to select style. What it does is it has a series of pre-trained libraries in various art styles. These apps are not just for architecture, they're also for all kinds of artistic uses. You can find a library that matches up with what you want to do. I typically use the hyper-realistic. That generates very interesting, very detailed images for me. So you have your prompt in the box, you select your aspect ratio, you select hyper-realistic, and then at the bottom there you say it says create. You hit that button, and it will flash for about 15 seconds or so, and then it will return an image. Now, before we go off this slide, I want to go back up to where it says add your photo. This app also allows you to, you could make a sketch by hand, and it doesn't have to be a complicated sketch. You could take a picture with your phone. You can upload it through that button, and then you can use prompts to control how the AI interprets your sketch. So this way you can control a lot about, what the image is going to look like, especially if you have a specific site and you have a specific line sketch of an idea that you're trying to work with. You put it into that input there, and there's a slide that goes along with that to help you and help the AI understand how much influence you want that image to have over the final image. You can have it 100% influencing, you can have it 50% influencing, and it'll give you lots of variations based on your own sketch. That is enormously productive. And I do that
two
every
ways that
day.
work. There's two ways that works, and it is it's a feature on almost all of them, so it's not limited only to the phone apps. You can use it on the web user interfaces and
Yes.
on the downloaded systems that are on your own computer. It's called either image to image, and that uses the image that you're supplying rather than that random noise we were talking about before. It'll add random noise on top of the image, and that's what that slider bill is talking about. The more noise added and then subtracted will change the image more, and the less noise added and subtracted will change the image less. It's very, very powerful. And the other system they use besides image to image is something called control net. So control net adds another layer in between that noise and your prompt that is your sketch that informs the computer of what direction to take all of it. So it's a different way of controlling the image, but both using your own images are very, very powerful, and also a great way to preempt any copyright things, because this a completely computer created work is not copyrightable. However, a human created work that's been augmented by the computer is. So in that way, since the courts have already said that a completely computer generated work is not copyrightable, if you add your own sketch to it, you can usurp that and make it copyrightable, make it your own.
And
There's,
just
yeah, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say, I'm using the phone apps, like I said earlier. I'm also using the desktop apps that Brian is talking about. And I may take an image generated on my phone app, and I may upload it to my desktop, and I may run it through the desktop version. So I'm taking images that are generated by AI with my prompts and running them through various AI generators to change them and to get them closer to what I want. This is an incredible leverage on your personal creativity as an architect, as an artist in this field. You can blow through lots of ideas very quickly, and
Well,
it's enormously useful for that.
let's talk about a little bit, like, not everything is perfect.
Right.
Neither is this, right?
Here's
So
the limitations.
it's got some issues, and every issue there's a workaround. There's a way to solve the problem. But there's certainly, it isn't going to be perfect the first time out. You have to understand you're going to break some eggs to make this omelet, and then how do you correct those situations where things go wrong? One of the first problems is that the image resolution is relatively small. The space that this is actually working in is only a 12 by 12 pixel space, that the really small latent space that the computer is doing calculations on. And the largest that we can get out of the original models was 512 by 512 pixels. That's great for social media, but it's not great for blowing up and printing on a 40-inch by 40-inch presentation board. It's just going to be too pixelated. There's other ways to kind of fix that. Upscaling, filling in for information that wasn't there before. We'll show you exactly how that works a little bit later
Yes,
on.
that problem's largely been solved.
Right. The data training set anomalies is a little bit harder to solve. We keep running into holes in the model, things that the model can't do yet, or it doesn't understand. Either it's a hole due to the language processing thing, or it's a hole due to images that it hasn't seen. Some of those we know are the language processing issues, like split family home, right? We were trying to do a split level home, and it didn't understand what split level was, because that's archispeak, right? That's a term that has gotten into the public a little bit more, but all archispeak terms are hit or miss. They're not all missing, and they're not all there. I would try to use your language to be more common rather than architectural.
Yeah, because it has trouble with a lot of the words that we use every day as professional architects, and it's not trained on architecture per se. it doesn't understand some things. Now, it does understand stylistic references like Victorian, but it's not going to understand something like international style necessarily. So the point of this is that as you do your prompts, and we're going to get into the prompt integration a little bit later, is that sometimes you have to talk to the software like it's a 2-year-old. You have to break down what you're looking for into very simple descriptive terminology, descriptive geometry, in order for it to get closer to what it is that you're ultimately looking for in the image.
Exactly. Some of those training data set anomalies, it's seen 4.8 billion images from the internet. That was the original training data set. It was a large set, 4.8 billion images available for free from France for the training purposes. It's since been taken down because they found some toxic images in that set, about 200 of them that they had to get out of the set. The reason I bring that up is these models, since they've seen everything on the internet, they've seen a lot of not safe for work content. Some of that can bubble out of the model anytime. It's not, you can try to control for it as much as you can, and they're on the web based things, there's filters. So if you get just a black image back, or sometimes they give you a warning, this image had not safe for work content, so it wasn't shown to you. They've put some filters on the web-based content, but if you're doing it on your own desktop software, it could pop up at any moment. So I wouldn't run these images in the presence of a client.
Yeah, it's hard to get this stuff out. It's so ingrained in a lot of the image libraries that you and there's no one can go image by image and remove this stuff. So it's still creeping in. And I don't know if anyone was following the Google release of Gemini. They had some problems because some of that dark content was coming out on day one of the release of Gemini, and they had to take it down.
Yeah.
So just
So
be aware of that.
if you're using it for good, it's less likely to come out. But it still can. If you start going looking for it, it's like any other place in the world. If you're in the bad part of town, you're going to find the stuff you're looking for, right?
Brian,
So,
tell them about the dirty diner.
oh gosh. Well, so here was the plan. The idea was every image that I was getting out of this was very antiseptic and clean. And I thought George Lucas really transformed the film industry with Star Wars by making sci-fi kind of schmutzy. So I wondered, what can I do to create an image that's going to be a little bit more gritty, a little bit more real than being so perfect and antiseptic? I thought, I'm from Jersey. A Jersey diner would be the best thing to do to try and highlight a dirty diner. So I type in my prompt and I put in all the other stuff with the prompt, but dirty diner was the subject of the prompt. And instead of getting back an uncleaned diner, I get back an image of 4 women in mini skirts with thigh-high stockings and high heels. And I was like, and a sign that said dirty diner up there on the top. And I was like, okay, this was not what I was looking for. But that's a prime example of the contextual ideas of the words creeping in different ways. So the model associated dirty with sexual content rather than the schmutz that I was looking for.
And that's why you have to talk to it sometimes like it's a 2-year-old. So that
Right.
you don't get this, as an image return. And it can happen with other things too. I mean, Brian talked earlier about split level. He and I had been talking on the phone and realized that a lot of the images that we were producing early on, 6 months or so ago, there were no split level buildings of any kind in any of them. So I said to Brian, I said, see if you can generate a split level. And I also tried. It was enormously difficult. The image generator in the libraries did not know what split level was. So we had to change the language. We had to change how we described it. Misaligned levels. We started using geometric terms. And then lo and behold, we were able to produce split level homes and split level buildings once we realized that the terminology was the problem.
And this is a new term for prompting that we're calling sidestepping, right? We are trying to find a way using the words to get around the anomalies in either the language training model or the image training model. So we'll have to figure out a way to speak to it so that it understands what message we're trying to get across.
Are we going on? You want to talk about how it doesn't represent human hands very well? It gives you too many fingers. It doesn't know that's 5 fingers and 5 toes.
And it
that's one of the
fuses
ways.
things too. Like if
Yeah.
if you did Chewbacca holding a kitten, it wouldn't know where the Chewbacca's fur ended and the kitten's fur ended. So it would blend Chewbacca and the kitten together unless you contrasted the colors, like Chewbacca holding a black and white kitten or something like that. You might get the kind of look that you're looking for, but it will blend fingers and toes together. It'll
Right.
blend things that have similar textures or materials together. We've had issues with roof lines, especially because it understands that there's a roof on there, but it doesn't understand a hip roof or gable roof as well. It'll mess up the roof line and blend things together or fuse them that shouldn't be.
And
And
we
then
have examples of that. That
yeah,
we can show you.
the last one that's really frustrating the heck out of me is it won't produce something that I know that it knows exactly. And that has to do with almost everything. It will not do it exactly right. It won't do the Statue of Liberty right. It will not do the Empire State Building correctly. It will not do Falling Water correctly. It'll do Falling Water-esque. You know, it'll do the New York City skyline sort of, but it doesn't get it right. You know, it's not exact. You can tell that it's not quite New York City. You can tell that this is Falling Water-esque. It's got to have seen thousands and thousands of images of this home, but it doesn't get it right. Now, how could I get it right? I could start with a picture of falling water, add some noise, and then go back to that picture of falling water and maybe change all the colors or change the materials and play with what the actual falling water is using a control net image or that add your photo. But just using the words, I can't get to falling water.
Yeah. Now, why does this happen? It's, if you think about it, falling water, we all know what falling water is, and it knows what the AI knows what falling water is too. But it's drawing images from its pre-trained library of falling water taken from all different angles. So if you remember the earlier slides where the image is diffused and where the noise is taken out, as it starts layering up those images of falling water, as it diffuses it merges them into a kind of a super falling water, which is showing multiple images and multiple viewpoints at the same time. So you're not getting falling water, you're getting a building that has the qualities of falling water because of the way it diffused the images.
And that's one of the copyright issues that I think is really puts to bed a lot of you're just stealing images off of the internet. AI is just stealing images without permission off of the internet. No, none of these images are on the internet. Not until I put them there, right? None of them have been there because they're all generated new. This is brand new image generation, and it has the ability to do 2 to the 50th power. I don't know if you want to put that in the calculator and figure out how many images that is. I did it one time. It's like 1.2 quadrillion images or something like that, but that's more than the number of stars that we can see in the sky.
Right, but even that's not the whole internet. These AI generators, image generators, are trained on specific libraries. So it's not going out to the entire internet when
Right.
it's generating your image. So you have to understand that. And that's why there are different art styles in the apps that in order to get access to the various libraries. And we'll get into more detail about that too.
So here are some of those roofline mistakes and some of the small other idiosyncrasies that you can see in these generated images. My general process is to generate a lot of images, find the best handful of images that I like out of the group that I've generated, and then to those images still apply some more transformation and corrections to get them to the level of presentation that I want. So it's a refinement process. There's a design thinking process that goes through this, refining the prompts, refining the images as you go. You'll see this unfold as we go. Bill, do you want to talk about these images a little bit?
Yeah, I generated these images myself. You see the zigzagging roof line of the two roofs crashing together. It doesn't account for the geometry of a roof, actually how it gets framed. That's the one on the left. And the one on the right has problems with some of the architectural details. It does not completely reflect symmetrically all the time. And you'll see that sometimes it takes liberties with some of the stairways, some of the doors, stonework and things like that. But you get an image. Now, the reason why I like that image is because it from that image, I was able to generate other images with similar ideas and correct a lot of those problems. And as a creative leverage, that's tremendous. Here you see more. Here you see more of them. You notice on the left, the bay window is uneven. And actually, I'm not sure that could exist in three-dimensional space. On the lower right, you see garage doors into what looks like it's the living room windows. So it doesn't know the plan arrangement. And then you hear two doors, could be a two-family house, but generally speaking, two doors are not what you normally would see. So you have to kind of run these images back and forth through the image generator until it comes back with something that is closer to what you want. But those are the kinds of things that you'll see as you play around with these image generators. You're going to run across all of these things, and you need to learn what the limitations are as well as what the power is of this, and then using your prompts to get the images that you actually want. But you might generate 100 images, only maybe 8 to 10 are even usable, but it does them at such a high rate of speed. You can go through and delete the ones that have obvious mistakes in them very quickly. And it's extremely useful in that regard.
Moving on to our next slide, this is where it's going to start to get fun for you all. So if you have those web apps open or phone apps open now, I'd love for you to start putting in some prompting on your own. And we're going to start teaching you now how to prompt. You can share the images in the chat so we can see how everybody's doing with this stuff and what you're creating. Use your own creativity, do as much as you want or as little as you want to try and experiment and see what kind of images you're going to get. These are just an example in the prompting box, which is normally what you'll find as there's a prompt box in every image generator. There's not always a negative prompt, but there may be an option to add a negative prompt if you want to. The positive prompt, we'll just call that the prompt. That's what you want to see. That's the subject, the image in detail of everything that you're looking for. All of the stuff that you want, you put in the prompt box. Conversely, everything you don't want to see, you can list in the negative prompt box. For some of those apps that don't have a negative prompt box, you can just use the negative of the term in language, like no hands or no cars, no grass, that kind of stuff in the positive prompt. Yeah.
No garage doors into the living room.
And if in the negative prompt, you would use the language positively. So you just put like garage doors in the living room in the negative prompt, and it automatically assumes the negative is there. So you could just list them. Comma separated values are usually the best way to do for me to keep track of each thought and each idea that I'm putting into the prompt. So you can see down here this example of the prompt. And when it spits out the image, it doesn't do it. It's not as true to the prompt always. It is an approximate fit to the prompt is what you're getting. So here I was asking for a multi-level deck, and I didn't get a multi-level deck, right? So I was asking for stuff. I got almost everything else I was looking for, and I was avoiding almost everything else I was not looking for. But it isn't true to the prompt 100% of the time.
Sometimes you have to run it through the image generator several times, because remember, it's diffusing images together. So each time you run the same prompts through the image generator, you're going to get a slightly different image.
Especially you're using a random or different seed. Down here, it has this number called a seed. That's the name of that random generated noise. So we could get back to the exact same random generated noise that's been input and work on this image differently if we thought that this seed was particularly good for us and a good example. Prompt design, there's two terms that we've sort of come up with around prompting. You know how software people have co-opted the software architect or user experience UX architect? Well, now they're kind of they're attacking the engineers now and calling this prompt engineering, but we'd like to call it a little bit different. The art of creating the prompt as prompt designing, and prompt engineering more as the management of these prompts. You're going to be able to develop for yourself a prompt library of styles, of subjects, of material that you can then pull the prompt out of that library and reuse it for a different project. It's kind of like reusing your drawings or details. These prompts are going to be very important to store them in a way that you can retrieve them quickly and reuse them. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you're doing this.
Right.
It's going to be, if you start to get images that are useful and especially good, that prompt is going to become more and more valuable for you.
Yeah,
The
just as an
people,
example,
yeah, go ahead.
I save my strings of prompts into a Word document, and I pull it up when I need to create images. I will pull up my Word document with all the prompts in it, go through and pull the prompts out and copy them and paste them into the prompt box. This way I know that the prompts are already along the lines of what I was looking for. So you'll do the same thing at some point. You'll be creating strings of prompts and you'll be saving them outside of this software as you use the software and learn how your prompts affect the image.
Right. And a lot of these images, when you get one that starts, I don't know, they have the kids saying that it starts slapping, right? This prompt is really working. You're getting a lot of high quality images from this prompt. You're going to want to give that prompt a little bit more weight, a little bit more priority in your set. Like, I know I can go back to this one and get the kind of detail or my office style, right? How do I want to present this to my clients? That has been a question I've been wrestling with over and over. And I think it's the ability now to tailor our presentation style to a specific client is so much more powerful than being known for our own particular style of art in our presentation. It's,
Brian, we're starting to get images in the chat box.
I think they're great. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
amazing.
It's fantastic you guys can do this all of a sudden that quickly to architects, contractors, clients. That's great.
Yep.
So some of the other strategies I wanted to share with you for effectively getting the image you want is it's not just about the prompts. The prompt and the model go hand in hand. If you're looking for a photorealistic style, the image database, they have ones that are fine-tuned on photorealistic styles. So to align what you're looking for with the kind of image generating model that you have is really key. If you're looking for an anime style, they have models that are built or pre-trained on anime images. You'd rather use that than force the base model to do something that it wasn't trained to do.
And
So
the reason why that's important is because sometimes earlier on in your design discussions, let's say with a client, you might want the images that you show the client to be a little bit looser. You don't necessarily want to produce a photorealistic image right at the first meeting. You may want something that's more like an oil painting. They have a library for that. You might want something that's more cartooned. They have a library for that. So you can literally pick the library and you can have as loose or as tight of a presentation you want. And what I like to do is I like to start with looser images. And as I work with the client, I gradually ramp up the realism as we go through the design process so that it starts to gel in the mind of the client. Because if you show a client a photorealistic image immediately, they get stuck on that. So you've got to remember how you deal with the client, the psychology of how you present your work it can be amplified in this AI and can be extraordinarily useful to you in your workflow and in your communication with clients and with your staff.
So this is a little bit about the prompt engineering I was talking about. This is brand new stuff, right? This is something that we don't have best practices for yet, but I encourage you not only to use the software ethically, but to develop these best practices of prompt storage. This is where you're going to be able to control your costs. If you're subscribing, many of the image generating companies are charging by the token. Tokens are roughly about a word size of mathematical information. But you buy credits from a lot of these companies like Midjourney or OpenAI, and then you're spending the credits on the prompt. The cost of the prompt is going to be determined by the number of tokens, and each word roughly is a token. So you can add up, the larger the prompt is, maybe that's what you're going to need to get the image you want, but it's going to cost more than a simpler prompt.
Right.
So controlling the costs here and controlling your prompts, having a prompt library and who can use those prompts and how often is how you're going to be able to control the overall input cost of what this is going to cost your company to create
And
the
you have to be
images.
careful because a lot of the AI image generators they save your prompts for you and you can go back and find them. But I would not do it that way. You're going to end up blowing through your credits quickly, and you're going to end up wasting money on the images that you can't use,
Yeah.
images that you will have to discard. So we're recommending that you copy and save your prompts in another file so that you can go back to them later, so that you're not being charged every time you're reusing a prompt.
This is the way that tokenizing kind of works. If you type in a cute and adorable bunny, it's separating each word into a different number. That number is then aligned in that cubular space that Bill was talking of the images, and they're using statistics, applied statistics, to align your prompt with its tokens along the diagonal of this hypercubic space, 4-dimensional tensor space. It's actually a 12-dimensional tensor space. So when you use your statistics to align that prompt along that diagonal of that cubular space, that's how it stacks those images and blends them together.
Brian, the chat's filling up. It looks beautiful. A lot of fun stuff.
These are great images.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what great when you get, but this is, I want to talk just for a moment, since you guys are doing such a wonderful job with the images in the chat. It's amazing to me when we do this for architects and they start doing this, because the quality that comes out compared to what other people are doing on the internet is amazing. And I think this has to do with the way the architect's brain works. Like that and all of our training, and all you guys are great architects anyway, right? So it really makes a difference, because this is like giving a paintbrush to an elephant. With no training, it's going to come out a mess. And I've done this. I've looked for ways to how to break the thing. What prompts can I put in? One of the ways that I did it was flipping the prompts, taking my positive prompt and putting it in the negative box, and putting my negative prompt in the positive box, and seeing what happened. It is scary and dark, so you guys can go to that area, but I love the fact that all these are bright, light, great designs. I love the windmill. And
Yeah.
these ideas keep coming, and you can generate these sustainable ideas over and over again. One augmented aspect that we haven't talked about yet is using AI to help with this prompt generation. So we can, if you get a good prompt, take that prompt, feed it into Chat GPT or another large language model, and see if it can generate new prompts for you based on your good working prompt. What else am I not thinking of? What can I add to this?
That's a great way to get good prompts, because the chat AI can produce lists of prompts based on what you're looking for. But I just want to point out something Brian said earlier. He talked about, giving it to an elephant and having an elephant take the paintbrush and paint. Now you're going to end up with a piece of art, but you're not going to end up with a piece of art that really means a whole lot, because the elephant is not trained as an artist. And the reason why this is important to me is that this is why AI is not going to replace you. I know a lot of architects and a lot of artists have fears that it's going to replace them. It's not going to replace you, especially architects, because if you generate an image that looks great and you want to use it and turn it into a real building, your client is not going to be able to do that without you. You are going to always be necessary in order to translate that image, no matter how good it is, into real building materials. The AI doesn't know about steel and loading. It doesn't know about HVAC calculations. It doesn't know about a lot of the technical aspects that we are trained to know on how to integrate materials together aesthetically and functionally and economically, it doesn't know any of those things. So architects will always be needed regardless of the AI.
I
And
think for most of this, it's
that's
like
important.
this idea of an airline pilot, right? AI has been ubiquitous and we haven't heard about it for many, many years. Only in this explosion over the past year with the generative text and images that and NVIDIA stock going through the roof, has people really jumped on the AI bandwagon. But AI has been landing and taking off your planes for years and years and years. The airplane pilot is there in case something goes wrong. We're finding everywhere you look that this AI technology is human plus machine. It's maybe an 80-20% solution, like 20% is your input and 80% of the calculations done by the machine. That's fine. But the computer can't do anything without your help, without your control, without your creativity, without your input. And then it's stuck after it creates this image. How are you going to build the building? So this is really, I've seen a lot of hype on YouTube and commercials where it's, hey, real architects versus AI. That's not, they're setting this up as a false
Right.
contest here, because that's not the truth about architects versus AI. It's architects using older technology versus architects using newer technology, right? That AI doesn't do anything by itself. It needs that input. It needs your control and your advice and your training to get there. So this is, how can you take you from using the old technology to you using the new technology? And then how is that new technology going to augment what you're already doing?
And that's why we're doing these presentations, because we want the profession to be ahead of the curve. We want all of you using this technology so that you can improve your workflows, improve your business models, improve the quality of your work going forward. And if we do that, we will always be a part of the discussion in buildings, and maybe we can regain some of the former stature that we used to have in the building environment creation. And that's why we're doing this.
These models that I'm talking about here, and I'm talking about the pre-trained image models, they're available on the internet. You can get them from either huggingface.com or civitai.com. There's repositories for people that blend and train these models on their own for different styles. This is using the exact same prompt and the same setting for all three models, but you'll see there are different results. Hardblend has been trained for photorealistic type models, and Lyriel has been trained on anime type models or pictures. So the styles that you get from the same prompt, same seed, same settings, you'll see comes out a little bit differently. So this is what I mean. You can not just use the prompt, but also understand how your prompt is interacting with your model and what kind of image are you looking for. So let's get into the prompting categories. These prompts, I hope I see some of the prompts that people are putting in this chat are building them in a great way. You can add any of these categories and each one has a different effect on your model. If you go back and you're using that Stable Diffusion Turbo, you can see the effect of adding each one of these words and sections and instantaneously how it changes your image. That won't leave you in the dark, and as you're experimenting with building prompts, you can see the effect immediately rather than running any tokenized processes. And then you can take that prompt and feed it back into one of the better image processors and get a better result out of it.
Right.
So the subject I want to talk about, that's important. That's what you really, the focus of your whole art piece is going to be. The medium is extremely important. Is it a photograph? Is it an oil painting? Is it a woodcut? I've been trying to do murals on brick right now because that's been challenging for me, is to get the brick texture to shine through the two-dimensional artwork that I'm doing. And I could do a mural on a wall, but then it looks flat. I want it to look more realistic. So I want always to be experimenting with the medium. For a longest time, I was trying to do sketches on yellow tracing paper, but it doesn't know what yellow trace is or bumwad or it doesn't know the terms. So it didn't know what I'm looking for. And I finally got it. I figured it out, but it was weeks and weeks of trying to learn sidestepping to get the right words for that medium. Bill, what challenges or interesting things have you come across with different prompting categories?
Well, as you point out, you went right to the subject. Obviously, you're going to put your prompts in for what you want to see, but you have to remember it's not just what you want to see, it's also how you want to see it. So you want to try to control the viewpoint. Do you want a bird's eye view? Do you want a ground level view? Do you want a down the street view? Those are the kinds of things should also be in your prompt box to help create the image and the viewpoint. I know a lot of times I'll put prompts in the box and I'll get back, let's say, half of an image, or it gets cut off along the edges. And again, that's because of the diffusion process. So I go back to my prompts and I say, I want to see the entire image or the entire exterior of the building or the entire interior of the room if I'm working on an interior type of a setup. So it's not just about what you're trying to generate. It's also about the viewpoint from which you want to see it. And Brian likes to put the camera settings into his prompts. And the images in the trained libraries understand some of these camera settings. So you can actually focal length and wide angle and fisheye lens and some of these things.
F-stops, yeah,
Actually,
all of that.
yeah.
And also artist names have an incredibly powerful effect on the style of your image. So I like to use as many dead artists as I can and kind of blend some styles together of dead artists. I try to avoid living artists, just out of respect for the work that they're still doing. And I don't want to end up on the end of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
That too.
And that goes to the ethics too. We're going to talk about ethics in more detail, but an artist who's gone, I mean, their foundation may be concerned that you're trying to create new art in their style, but living artists, for example, Banksy, I don't know if everyone knows Banksy, but even someone like Keith Haring, who's no longer with us, his work is very recognizable. The AI generators can generate new artwork in the style of that artist. And that's going to be disturbing to some of those artists, especially if they are still alive. So we have to ethically not do that.
Yeah, it's a little respect of, I wouldn't want somebody doing that with my buildings, and
Right.
and I do add my name into a lot of the prompts as a way to sort of copyright my prompt too. And if I found that my prompts and my buildings and my stuff was being used without my permission or people were copying my style, I think about how I would feel about that and then try to imagine not doing that to other people. It's the golden rule, basically. It can guide you in your ethics here.
Yeah, and that's a good way to protect your prompts. Brian puts his name in. I put architect William J. Martin as the first prompt, then EFABism, which is my design philosophy, econo-functional aesthetic balance, and then I start putting in the subject of what I want to generate, and it will generate imagery with those prompts, including the prompts that I put in of my own personal information, in a way that's unique to me. So that's a way to protect your prompts and to protect you from someone accusing you of stealing an image or generating an image that's very close to the images that they generate.
I have not been able to be very successful at a one and done. Imagine a large scale prompt, plug it into the computer, and then get the perfect image out on the first try.
It's hard to do that, but it does
It's,
happen.
I think this is the way clients think about architects too. Like you just get an image, or like Frank Lloyd Wright just drew up falling water in an hour while Kaufman was driving to his office, right? We just have the idea and we just need to get it out. It's much more iterative for me. It's the design thinking. So I'll start with an idea and then I'll have to keep developing that idea through prompting to get closer to what I'm looking for. So the next group of slides you're going to see using the same settings, the same seed, the same everything, same model. We're just altering the prompt. It starts altering the images and you start to build the prompt and design the prompt into something that's becoming more effective for the style of the image that you're looking for. So
And
here
then
we started with a schoolhouse.
copy and save that prompt to a separate file so you can go back to it later. I'm
Right.
sorry, Brian, go ahead.
So starting here with a schoolhouse, we get something, the chimneys are a little messed up, but it looks like an 1885 brick schoolhouse from somewhere. It's okay, interesting, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. What we're going for is something where we want something a little bit different. Let's add award-winning photograph of the subject, a schoolhouse. Now you should see it's the same model, but it brought it now inside. It looks like it hasn't been cared for a long time. The desks are still there. It's interesting. This is what the computer thinks an award-winning photograph of a schoolhouse is. But I didn't want the interior of the schoolhouse. I wanted an award-winning exterior perspective view. Like Bill was talking before, you have to tell it what you want to see, how you want to see it also. And then there's the subject is now a postmodern architect designed schoolhouse rather than just something from 1885. I wanted it not to be cartoony. Let's make it hyper realistic, add the camera settings, super detailed and a little resolution on there to tell it. It is not actually at 8K resolution. It's at the resolution the settings put it at, which was probably 1024 by 1024. However, the computer has seen many 8K resolution images and understands the detailing and the quality that those images have. I don't want it to be brick, right? So let's put the negative prompt, all the stuff that we don't want to see in the image. I don't want to see a lawn. I don't want to see signatures or any other text, ugly, bad proportions, and I do not want brick on the building. So this is what we get when we add the negative prompt to that previous prompt before. It changes it quite dramatically using the same settings. So there's nothing other than changing the prompt. And this gets really dramatic now because the prompt gets a lot bigger. This is an important part of prompting now. It's not just the words, but how important each word is in your prompt. And you can control that using these brackets and parentheses.
This is an important slide.
Yeah.
These brackets and controlling the weight of the various words in your prompt will allow you to fine tune. And that's what you need. You need that level of control.
And this is basically, other than putting your own image in, this is the most level of control that you can get out of this by using the parentheses to increase the weight and brackets to decrease the weight of a particular term. You can use them in the positive prompt or the negative prompt to start adjusting the weights of these models. There was a question in the chat, does the order of the words dictate how important each are? I have found that in my prompting, words at the beginning and at the end, the model seems to pay a little more attention to, but I have no documentation from anywhere that says that the order is important. It just seems that way. That could be something that's going on inside of my brain and isn't actually documented though.
Yeah, from my research into this, and that was an interesting question that I had too. Apparently, there is no, the computer, as it reads the prompts, is not prioritizing them in any way other than the use of the brackets and the parentheses. So it really doesn't matter where the prompt is in the list. But I have noticed, as Brian has said, that it does seem to pay more attention to the first prompt, the first few prompts, and then the last few prompts. And I'm not sure why that happens.
Again, if you put more of the subject in, more words, it'll also increase the weight of that. So if you say high school 3 times in the prompt, it's going to have 3 high school tokens in that prompt. So it's going to align more with that. If you just say high school 50 times over and over again, it's not saying high school once, it's saying high school 50 times. So it's like increasing that weight over and over again. It won't refine it or make it any better. It'll just make sure that all you're going to get is a high school, and it could possibly overfit your prompt a little too much. Overfitting is when you're controlling the model too much and you don't get anything different. You just get the same repeated image over and over again.
Brian, we want to leave some time for Q&A. So
Yeah, I'll go just a little bit faster. The brackets are decreasing the weight of the term, and the parentheses are increasing the weight of the term. There's the curvy parentheses. This one's very important and fun to use also. These little brackets give you options. So each token in here, curved, hipped, flat, or gable, is going to be replaced in each image generation. It won't use all of them. It won't blend them. It'll pick one out of the list and use that as its token. So here you can see it didn't do a gable roof. It did hipped, it did curved, it did flat, but it didn't do a gable. So out of the 4 runs, I didn't get a gable.
all right, we got to get to that fourth word, Brian.
Okay. We talked a little bit about overfitting, ambiguity, and complex language. We talked a little bit about this through the whole process, that your language should try to stay as simple as possible. Try not to use words that have multiple meanings or contextual meanings. They can affect the context of your model, what comes out. There's a lot of unintended bias in the models. One example was I asked it just to do an architect, and I've got over 500 images of white male architects. I didn't get one woman.
Right.
You know, so there's cultural bias that's stuck in the model. And I think that is, most of these models are reflective of what's on the internet, and internet's reflecting what's in society. So there's ways we can talk about how to clean that up, but mostly mindfulness and awareness of those biases so that you can correct for them yourself.
Yeah, it's
start-
really hard to train the bias out of the libraries. It's really hard to do that. So we have to be aware of it so that we don't unintentionally create or demonstrate bias in our imagery.
Fourth words for our CE ethical use. That's what we're talking about, is how to use this really ethically too. I think the most important thing about AI use by architects is divulging that you're using it. This is human plus computer. This is augmented by AI. Even if you're doing a article on your website, if you're producing copy, if you're using it for helping you with your proposals or something like that, if you're using it for generating these images, you can just augment it by AI or augmented by the particular type of AI that you're using. I've used it to write articles and feed my article into a large language model to refine it for better voice, proper grammar. What am I not thinking of? Those kind of questions. And I'll say augmented by Meta's large language model 2 or Llama 2 or whatever it is.
Yeah, just disclose that you're using it. If any of you are following my Instagram, I post a lot of AI on there, but not everything I post is AI. But if AI is used to create it, I will disclose that in the comment as I post to Instagram. And Brian and I feel it's very important for credibility for our profession to be using this in an ethical way. And if we do that, we can maintain credibility for the entire profession as we implement this new technology moving forward. Eventually, this AI technology is going to be integrated as a part of all the software that we use every day. Right now, I'm using Revit, and I have an AI add-in to the Revit along with my Lumion that I use to create imagery. And I have the AI open, I have the Lumion open, and I have the Revit model open as I'm doing my design work and as I'm doing my CD work and design development work and such. So I can see how each of these influence the other. So eventually that's going to happen with a lot of the software packages that we use. So we need to understand how this works. And this, again, is why Brian and I are putting on this session, so that you will understand basically how this stuff works, that you will not be afraid of it and will be able to fully utilize it as it's incorporated into all of this software.
The plugin name for Revit, I think, is Veras, Veras.
It's from Evolve Lab, and it's called Veras. And I've already incorporated it into my regular Revit use, and it works really well. And it works exactly as Brian and I have described. A lot of these models work with the prompt box and the controls and the brackets. And you can control the size of the images, the shapes of the images. It's quite useful.
So two things I want to talk about in the last minute before the Q&A, and that is other AIs that are not quite ready yet for us to use. Those are the plan fitting AIs. There's one called Make It, MAKET.ai from Canada. I haven't gotten that one to create a plan that's useful yet. There's another plugin for Revit. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. That was a plan fitting AI where you give it some rooms and program requirements, and it's supposed to fit a floor plate with that plan. These plan generators are awful, in my opinion, so far.
They're
I've
terrible.
spent hours and hours and hours trying to get them to produce one usable plan, and I haven't been able to do it yet. So they're not quite ready yet for use. You using the AI language models to try and produce specifications. That's my job, right? I write specs for a lot of other architects, and I wanted to see if I could use it to both augment what I'm doing or if it was going to replace me outright, right? And if I should start going back to design rather than writing the specs. It's terrible at writing the specs. In fact, it makes up stuff, and it makes up ASTM standards. It makes up things that don't, just to try and what's the next likely thing. But it's like having an intern that doesn't know any of those requirements and asking it to write a spec for you. It might know that ASTM has to be in there, but it won't know what the right numbers are. So it'll just make those other four numbers up, and that's not good at all. Right? It's happened to a lawyer in New York. He's been or is getting disbarred for having used Chat GPT, and it made up entire case law that didn't exist. So this is kind of these other areas where we're hoping that it would be intelligent and work for us. It's not there yet. It is not intelligent. However, with the image generation, it's gotten very, very good.
All right, let's see if we can answer some questions, Brian.
Sure.
What do we have in the chat box?
Does somebody want to moderate the questions? Cassidy, do you want to moderate the questions, go
Yeah.
through them and ask the ones for us, and then we can answer?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are doing a great job just in your presentation answering them. So I'll try to pick some out. How do we include AI in our projects, and how do we justify the additional costs to our clients? Do you see AI used for single family homes or multifamily / mixed suit or medical?
I see it used for all of those things, and I'm not sure that it actually adds any cost. I guess it would depend on your computer setup and what models you were using to create the images in the AI. If anything, it should improve your efficiency tremendously. You should be able to move much more quickly through design ideas. And not all the ideas will be shown to the client, but it will improve the quality of your design almost certainly. So I'm not sure that it adds cost, and I'm not sure you need to justify it to the client. The client's going to get a better product. It's going to make you a better architect. And I think you just learn how to use it and start incorporating it. And
One of the things that this does do, though, is if you're charging by the hour for a lot of the work that you've been doing, and now this is taking the amount of time that you used to render or sketch or hand draw some presentation drawings for the client, it's going to reduce that time tenfold or more.
right.
So if you're still charging by the hour and you're like, okay, now it took me 2.5 minutes to do this drawing rather than 2.5 hours, how are you going to then justify not paying yourself for the value that you're providing? So you may want to switch from a model where your hourly based fees are now value based and based on the overall content that you're providing.
We have another question. My biggest problem with AI has been that I can't get it to really fit a program at all. It never happens. Have you had the ability to set parameters such as width? Also, scale is usually off. Maybe it just needs time, ?
You need to do that in the prompts.
There's prompting, and I would, if it's really about controlling the exact image to something that's pre-designed or needs to be fit, I would use the image to image where you're putting your own photograph in, or using a control net where you're having a drawing that is informing that how that generation is going to happen. So I've taken a deep dive into how to hyper control this thing to get it exactly what I want, from perfect symmetry to no symmetry. I've been working in the fine art space to try and detail those things. Sometimes it doesn't always translate perfectly to architecture, the image generation ideas, at least how to control it for every particular style. It's possible to do everything you want to do on these to get the exact image you want, but it's not always obvious and easy, and especially not with the web-based or the phone-based apps. You need to get into the settings for that, and that's going to be our third presentation coming in a few months about how to really hyper control this with settings to get exactly what you need. Can we talk about training an AI model on your own data set of images? Sure, I'd love to. These models that are originally out there, the ones that have been pre-trained by other people for certain styles, have all been trained off of one base model that was released by Stability AI. They've added their images on top of that through a process called fine tuning and training. You need a set of 10 or 15 images of your own work or your own face or your own whatever you need, your car, whatever subject that you were trying to put on there. And Google has a program called Dream Booth. So you can put those 15 images as like a layer on top of that pre-trained model with a specific keyword. And then activate that keyword and it'll use those 15 images in that stack of images that Bill was talking about, blending things together. That'll now add that style in. So if you wanted to use your face in all sorts of marketing everywhere as a superhero, as you know, whatever you wanted to do, just train 15 images of your face with Dream Booth onto a checkpoint model that you like already, and then use that model to generate your images. This all has, that can only happen on your downloaded desktop version. That cannot happen
Right.
on a web version or the phone version.
Right. So you have to decide how you're going to use this. You have to decide what is the most productive way for you to use it in your practice. So you need to play around with this, share it with your staff, share it with people that you know, so you can compare images and explain to each other how you generated what you generated. We all need to learn from each other on this. We need to kind of collaborate as a profession on this, but I believe if we do that, we will be ahead of the curve. We will be successfully using this technology before a lot of the other allied professions are. There's a lot of fear out there, and we should not be afraid of this.
That third presentation about the settings in process of being built right now. So when I get it out in a couple of weeks, then we'll have scheduling of it, when it's going to happen, maybe another small firm exchange webinar on the settings of this. But for now, you don't need to take that deep dive into the settings, or if you do download it on your own computer, go ahead and try it. You can just go back to the default mode if you get in the weeds. The settings they can go pretty awry, and you can get stuff that's unusable right away if you adjust the settings outside of certain parameters. So understanding where those limits are is going to be part of that next presentation.
Absolutely. What else we got?
What sorts of group messaging boards, channels, pages do you recommend for learning from others in this field? That's a really good question. Reddit has a lot of categories for stable diffusion and other image generation, and Reddit is always a wealth of information that can share ideas, techniques, prompting. That's a great place to go. There is a website called Stability. I'm going to try and pull it up here and find it.
I also like Instagram. Instagram, tag images tagged AI or images tagged artificial intelligence. You'll see a lot of imagery come through there. You can see what's possible. You can see where people ran into problems with certain things. The hands are a big issue, because you'll see a lot of people in the news that they post images and they connect them with news articles. And if you look very closely at the image, you can see the fingers are blended together, and you know that's an AI image. It's not a legitimate photograph, but it's really hard to tell sometimes.
I put a link in the chat that's stablediffusion.fr, and this is an artists list style page. So this person went through 40 pages plus of different artists' names and produced 4 images for each, which is like a person, a landscape, or a house, and like an urban city environment. And you can see the effect of each artist's name on each prompt and how it's changed through that whole process. So the real fun with this is taking the different artists' names and blending them together to get blended styles, rather than just focusing on theirs. But there's a resource there of 40 plus pages of, and they've got 40 or 50 artists on each page. So you've got thousands of different artist styles to start applying to your prompting there. Stability art, or what is it called?
There's tons of them out
Yeah,
there.
you can start searching the web. Prompt
Yeah.
Hero is a good one. Playground AI. Playground has its own model. That is a great application. Their model works pretty well. And you can see what other people have done on a lot of these interfaces. Civet AI is a resource, a repository for the checkpoint models that you can download, also images and prompts. So there's a lot there.
I think we're done.
Yeah, we got about 1 minute left, so if you have any final questions, put them in the chat. But I want to thank you, Bill and Brian, for a very exciting and interesting presentation today. I know I thoroughly enjoyed it. In the chat, I just put the CE evaluation link. If you want to go back through the chat and get those CE words, if you missed any, go ahead and do that. Again, this evaluation is due tomorrow by noon Eastern time. Thank you all for your time and joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thanks.